Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. Joe Griffith is a native of Ennis, Texas, who is a graduate of Navarro Junior College and East Texas State University, where he received a degree in finance in 1965. He has been a comedian, a movie actor, commercial pilot, real estate developer, stockbroker, co-host of America's first ever television stock market program, and a featured artist on Sirius XM Laugh USA channel. Since 1971, Joe is a renowned motivational speaker, has delivered his message of hope to over 3,000 audiences. He's here today to ask the question, would you hire you? Please welcome Joe Griffith.
Thank you, Whammy. Appreciate it. Well, I tell you, he gave me a real nice introduction, but I have to admit something that I normally don't admit, but I'm at the age where you can admit this. He left out something in that introduction. I graduated from this university with a record that no one can ever beat. They can tie it, but they can't beat it. I had the lowest grade point average you can possibly have and graduate from a university. Now, some of you may tie that record, but you will never beat my record. So if I'm not the smartest tack in the box, how come I was successful and accomplished those and other things that he told you about? That's what I want to tell you. I know some things that you don't know because I didn't know them when I was your age. And these are things that will make your life more productive and make it better. One of the things is you have to learn to be unique. And by that I mean you have to be different from other people in a positive way. I'm going to tell you how I learned that. When I was 18 years old, a freshman in college, I entered a talent show as a comic. There were 20 people in the show. I was number 19 on the program. The first through 18 and number 20 were all piano players and singers. And when they introduced me as a comic, the crowd went nuts. And the reason they went nuts is because I was different from everybody else. So if you want to be really successful in life, you have to learn to do what I'm doing right now. Let me give you an example why it's important. When you graduate from this college, say you came here, these are your assets and this is your liabilities. And when you graduate from college, you're going to have assets more than your liabilities. I'm talking about not financial, but personal assets and liabilities. So you have these, and now you have more assets than when you got out of high school. But later on, you got to figure out how to turn these liabilities to a lesser percentage, and the quickest way to do that, what's the number one fear everybody has? Public speaking. You learn to do that, you have just taken a big edge over everybody else. And that's a way for you to be unique. I had a friend of mine that graduated from SMU with a banking degree, went to work for the big bank in Dallas, the lowest job in the lowest place he could go, and he noticed after about a year and a half that they were having an American Institute of Banking speech contest. And he entered that contest, and he won the Dallas contest, the first one on the way to regional and national. He won it because nobody else showed up. So sometimes just showing up will make you successful when it comes to something like speaking. He eventually wound up winning the national championship for the American Institute of Banking, all because he wasn't afraid to stand up in front of people. Who else knew about this? Well, it was in every newsletter. Everybody in the bank began to know who he was, including the chairman of the board, who invited him up to eat lunch in the executive dining room. He was no longer the guy down in the bottom of the basement. He was somebody they took an interest in, and they saw him having some potential, and they wanted him to be a part of their bank. About 10 years later, he was running a holding company of 30 different banks in the Dallas area, all because he made himself unique. So this is why it's important to understand assets and liability. Your personal, not money. I'm not talking about money and debt. I'm talking about your personal assets and liability. The more you can turn liabilities into assets, the quicker you will become a successful person. It's really a very simple thing. Your finance professor, where is he? You know about assets and liabilities. And when you take finance, you know about that. I majored in finance here, so that's how I use that analogy, is I see how important it is. But there's something else you got to have. And I'm going to deal this to you here today. I'm going to deal you 4 aces. I know some of you have the look that you've played poker before. If you have 4 aces, you have a winning hand, right? I'm going to deal you a winning hand in life. Remember, I had the worst grades you could have and graduate from college. You're going to have better grades than I did. So I'm going to show you how I overcame my college years to become a successful person. So we're going to have A, C, E, S. That's going to represent the aces. The first is the A, and that is attitude. Your attitude will determine your altitude in life. Now think about that. Your attitude will determine your altitude in life. So it's very important to have a positive attitude. Before we go any further, I want to define what I mean by success so we'll all know we have the same meaning. Success is when preparation meets opportunity. Now let me say that again. Success is when preparation meets opportunity. I'll give you a personal story of a very good friend of mine that I grew up with. They went to Texas Tech, majored in industrial engineering. He graduated from college, went to work for the phone company. About 5 years into his career, they went to a fellow 2 doors down from him and said, "We want you to go to Little Rock, Arkansas and run the phone company." He said, I don't think I want to do that. So they go down the hall to my friend 2 doors down and said, "We need you to go run the phone company in Arkansas." And his response was, "When do you need me down there?" One had a bad attitude because he wasn't prepared. And the other one was prepared. When the opportunity came, he took it. When he was 47 years old, he was chairman of AT&T. He went straight up the ladder because he was always ready and prepared for the next step. And that's how we always have to continue to prepare. Not only that, when he retired from AT&T, when he was 67, President Obama hired him for $1 to go run General Motors and bring them out of bankruptcy because they knew he knew how to do it. And he wrote a book called Saving American Icon. You see, he was ready. So you got to be ready, you got to be prepared because opportunity doesn't always come back. You have to be ready when it happens. The other thing is you got to have a positive attitude. Now let me give you how I first heard this. The summer before my junior year at college here, I worked in a tag factory in Ennis, Texas, from 3 o'clock in the afternoon to 11 at night, 7 days a week for 93 straight days. From 3 o'clock till 11 at night in that hot sun in the tin building, making about 90 cents an hour. At the end of the summer, the president would come around to all of us and say, "Who wants to work here next summer?" He came to me and I said, "I'm not going to work here next summer." He said, "Why not?" I said, "I didn't learn anything." He paused and said, "Yeah, you did." And I kind of smart-ass said, "Really? What did I learn?" He said, "You learned you don't want to do this the rest of your life." So sometimes learning what you don't want to do will guide you toward where you really want to be. Now, when I got in the Navy, we were talking about the Navy earlier. When I got in the Navy 2 years after that event, I'm on an aircraft carrier in the Pacific Ocean. I'm standing in the chow line talking to a guy that's been on board ship about a year. I'd only been on board ship for about a month. He said, "Joe, how do you like it on here?" I said, "I hate it. I hated every minute of it. I can't believe the Navy's going to waste 2 years of my life. 2 years of the prime part of my life they're going to waste." And he just looked at me very calmly and said, "Joe, you're the only one who can waste these 2 years." That's when I really had a wake-up call. You're going to have people give you wake-up calls in your life, and they happen to be there at the right time. And as I told you, I graduated with honors here, but the other kind of honors. And so I went to the library and got all the books to read that I'd never read when I should have in high school and college. And I started looking up words I didn't know. I looked up over 300 words, so I got my vocabulary up to about 325 after looking up those 300 words. And I still use some of those words today. Also, we had airplanes flying off the carrier all the time. And so instead of sitting down there in my office just complaining about everything, I went up and watched them take off and finally got somebody to let me take off with them. And I started getting interested in flying. And when I got out of the Navy, I became a pilot on an airplane and had 1,000 hours of flying time. All because in that chow line, he told me, you're the only one that can waste these 2 years. You see, my situation didn't change. What changed was my attitude. And that's the only thing we can control in our lives is our attitude. The other thing about attitude, you need to find a mentor. When I joined the Sigma Chi fraternity here, they gave me a big brother. If you join a sorority, they're going to give you a big sister. And why do they do that? To mentor you through the process and make you a better member. So everybody needs somebody to show them the way to make the trip a little easier. When I was a stockbroker, I passed all the exams, I got my license, and I now was allowed to lose everybody's money. I had a license, but I had no experience. But there were people in my office that had a lot of experience. And whenever I decided to do something, I would always go ask them, Carl, would you buy this stock? No. I said, well, why? It looks good. They got great earnings and everything. I don't care about the earnings. Look at where they come from. 85% of their sales come from one company. And if they decide they don't want to do business there, you've lost all your money. What if I hadn't asked them that question? So always have a mentor. I've had hundreds of mentors. Some were longer than others. Some were shorter than others. One of my mentors was the guy in the chow line on the aircraft carrier who said, you're the only one that can waste these 2 years. So it's all about your attitude. Now that's the A, is your attitude. The second ace I'm going to give you is C, and that's for commitment. Now, when they tell me in the career development office, a lot of people never come by the career development office to find out what to do next that they're graduating. And I said, I know why they don't come. Well, why? We don't know. I said, because they don't know what they want to do next. Because when you pick a major, what do they give you? A degree plan. They gave you a plan with a step-by-step of how to get to where you want to be for your ultimate goal, a degree. Now, I got bad news and I got good news. The bad news, no one's ever going to give you a plan again. You're going to have to come up with your own plan, and that's the good news. Now, plans are important because plans lead you to a goal. You have to have a goal and a plan to achieve that goal. Boone Pickens is a legendary billionaire oil man that donated $500 million to Oklahoma State. That's how much money he has. He said when he was a young man, his father said, son, your mother and I have been talking. Said, a fool with a plan can beat a genius without a plan. We're worried you may be a fool without a plan. So he woke up at that day and realized he had to have a plan. I do not know a successful person that didn't have a plan. I know a lot of money managers that manage billions of dollars, and they all have a plan. It may be different from everybody else's plan, but it is their plan, and it works for them because they have a plan. Now, here's what's fascinating to me, and I didn't get this when I was your age. It took me years to understand this. People spend more time planning a vacation than they do planning their lives. And the reason, they have a destination chosen for the vacation, and that makes them have a plan on how to get there. If you're going to be successful in life, you need a plan. Now, you can alternate the plan, just like an airline pilot. When they take off, they have a flight plan that they're required by law to file. Now, they may have to go around a thunderstorm, but they know where their flight path is, and they know how to get back to it because they know where they're really going to go. So decide where you're going to go, and decide how you're going to get there, and develop a plan. Now, plans can change, but you never get rid of a plan. They can change, but you still got to have goals. It's important to realize that if you don't have a goal and you don't have a plan, you may as well just quit. Everything else I'm telling you is not going to work. So let's move on to the next thing. I've given you A for attitude, C for commitment. People are not committed until they have something to be committed to. And that's why you need a goal, and that's why you need a plan. The third thing is E, A-C-E. What's the E? Enthusiasm. That means you have to have a passion for what it is you do. If you don't have a passion or you're not on fire with enthusiasm, someday you will be fired with enthusiasm. So why not be the one that's enthusiastic? Because if you're don't you like to be around people that are excited about things? Well, so does every boss want to hire somebody who will be excited about being there. So you got to have enthusiasm and passion. I'll give you a current story that maybe some of you are familiar with. There's a young golfer named Jordan Spieth. Jordan graduated from Jesuit High School a couple years ago, and when he graduated, he'd already won the U.S. Junior Golf Amateur Championship. And when he was a senior, he won the U.S. Amateur. The only person to ever do that before in the history of golf was Tiger Woods. And then he went to Texas and won the national championship his freshman year and dropped out with no status on the PGA Tour. Went out there because he believed in what he wanted to do, and he got out there. He won a tournament. No one's ever done that at 19 in 82 years. Now, why was he successful? Sure, he has talent. But when he picked up a golf club when he was 9 years old, he knew what he wanted to do with the rest of his life. And that's where your passion comes from. You find something you love. Now, in golf and sports, there's an obvious avenue to get where you want to go. Junior amateur, amateur pros, college, and all that. In the rest of our lives, there's not always an obvious way to see it. A friend of mine became an insurance agent after World War II because he didn't have the money to go to college. He got married and had a child. He was an insurance agent in Cleveland, Ohio. He hated the job. And after about 8 or 9 years, he couldn't take it any longer. He always wanted to be a journalist, but he didn't know how to get there. So he wrote the president of his company and said, I'm an agent, I'm a good writer, I need to come to your office, move to Chicago, and rewrite the training manuals. The guy bid on it. He brought him up there. He wrote all the training manuals, and when he got through, the man said, by the way, I have an idea for a new magazine. I'd like to have you be the editor. He was prepared, so he said yes. It turned out to be Success Magazine, and his name is Og Mandino. He wrote a column in one of those magazines because somebody failed to turn in one, and he had to think up something and put it in there. An editor in New York wrote him a letter and said, if you ever want to publish this as a book, I will publish it. And he did. 6 months later, he turned it into a book, and when he died about 15 years ago, it had sold over 50 million copies. He was one of the happiest people I ever knew, who used to be one of the most unhappy people he knew because he wasn't doing what he knew he wanted to do. That's how important it is to be passionate. The same thing happened to me. When you're an entertainer, I didn't know, when I got out of the Navy, I'd won a talent show in the Navy. I hardly ever lost a talent show, but I didn't know how to do anything. There wasn't some agent there waiting to discover me and take me to New York, make me a big shot. So I came home and did what I didn't mind doing, being a stockbroker. And then one day when I'm 29 years old, a man was sitting in my office, a little younger than I am now. And he said, Joe, I spent 40 years working for the same company, and I wish I'd done something else with my life. And for 12 months, I couldn't sleep. I knew my passion was calling me, and I had to go figure out how to do it. I still didn't know how to do what I wanted to be, but I knew I had to go find it because it wasn't going to come find me. You'll find opportunity is not looking for you. You've got to go look for the opportunity. And I wound up spending 30 years. I'm in the Speakers Hall of Fame. I got inducted in 1981 with some guy named Ronald Reagan. All because I left to follow my passion. You follow your passion, people will follow you. Because that's how important it is. So your goal and your passion is important. I'll tell you a quick story. A guy sitting in a park on a bench. He had his dog with him. And the dog sees a rabbit and took off chasing the rabbit. And as he was barking and running across the park, other dogs saw the dog and started chasing the dog. And eventually the other dogs started falling away when they got tired. But the dog chasing the rabbit kept on going and kept on going. And finally someone asked the old man, why did your dog keep going? when all the other dogs gave up. He said, my dog was the only one that saw the rabbit. You see, that dog had a goal. The others were just running. They didn't know where they were going or why. So that's why it's so important to have it. I have a good friend of mine that's 80 years old. He played on the PGA Tour in the 1960s. He's been teaching golf for 55 years. Now, every country club, every driving range has a golf pro. Some of them have 2 or 3 or 4 of them. But I've seen them fly in from out of state to take a 1-hour lesson with my friend because he's so enthusiastic about what he's doing. At 80 years old, he's out there 5-6 hours a day teaching because his passion for the game rubs off on other people. Passion will follow you. If you don't have the passion, you're going to be following other people. So you really have those 2 choices. So I'm giving you the A, the C, and the E. And we got to get the 4th ace I'm going to give you. It's service. There's an old saying that I love. You will get what you want out of life once you have given enough other people what it is they want out of life. Let me show you why I believe that. You've heard of Walmart. There's a Walmart store over across the street from here. Sam Walton died, and his estate was cut in half by estate taxes, and his 4 children divided the rest of it, so there's a fourth of a half. And today, his 4 children are still in the top 20 of the 4 wealthiest people in the world. The reason is Sam Walton found a way to give more people what they wanted than anyone had ever done before in retail. How about Bill Gates? Dropped out of college. Wonder how he made it. You know why he made it? He found his passion. He dropped out of college to follow his passion. I'm not saying drop out of college. But he knew what his passion was, and if he didn't do it then, someone else may do it or it may not get done. Look at Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs didn't say, what kind of phone do you want? He came up with a phone that everybody would want that made their life so much better and less complicated, and he died a wealthy man. Mark Zuckerberg dropped out of college also. They follow their passion. It's very important to follow your passion, and all of them were serving other people. You will get what you want once you give enough other people what they want. Now I'm giving you 4 aces. A, C, E, S. This is a winning hand. I've seen it win over and over and over again. But if you don't play the hand, you're not going to win. So you have to play. It's like if I give you a free ticket on an airplane. You still got to get out of bed and go out to the airport and get on the airplane, or the ticket's worthless. Now I can tell you all these things today, but you got to get up and go out to the airport and get on the airplane. And these aces will change your life. Now I want you to be successful. I want you to be happy in life and do what you want and help other people, and you will be successful. So go for it. I've given you 4 aces, and it's how you play this hand will determine how you're going to live the rest of your life. Thank you.